Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, respected dignitaries and the esteemed speakers, and the office bearers of All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all for the 44th webinar of the All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation Training Academy. Today, we shine a light on the most alarming yet overlooked health threats of our time, that is antimicrobial resistance, which is a kind of a silent pandemic. Reason being, every year the AMR is attributed to almost 1.3 million deaths because of this resistant strain of the infections. And if the trend continues, it is estimated that by 2050, it may claim approximately 10 million lives annually. So this has been recognized as a global health crisis. And even the recent United Nations General Assembly high-level meeting scheduled in September 2024 has recognized as an urgent global threat affecting the human, animal, and plant health, and which is going to have an impact not only on the health aspect, but also on the economies of the countries. And it has given a clear political declaration for all the member states to come up with the policy interventions to contain this alarming issue. So today we are going to dwell upon on the drivers for the AMR, that is antimicrobial resistance, and the policy interventions needed and already been defined at global and national and state level, and what are all the best policy interventions needed to contain these AMR issues and the effective implementation aspects. So we have with us today expert speaker on the AMR stewardship program, Dr. Rangareddy Burri, and also joined by Dr. V. Raju, the Vice President, Regulatory Affairs of Quadrant Pharmaceuticals. And we also have our President, Shri R.P. Chaudhary, the President of All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation and the Assistant Commissioner from the Maharashtra FDA, and our Honorary our Director General, Shri Uday Bhaskar, for the Director General for the AIDC University Training Academy. So pleased to welcome you all, sir. And I would now request our President, Shri R.P. Chaudhary, sir, to offer the opening remarks.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this crucial webinar on antimicrobial resistance containment. I am R.P. Chaudhary. I'm President of ADCOC, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker for today, Dr. Rangareddy Burri, President of he is President of Infectious Control Academy of India and an honorary professor, University of Hyderabad. We are gathered here today to address the global health challenge of immense significance, that escalating threat of the antimicrobial resistance. The ability of microbes, as we all know, to evolve and become resistant to every drug designed to treat them has profound implications for our healthcare system, our economy, as well as well-being of the community worldwide. Here today, Dr. Reddy, who is a speaker on this session, is a leading expert in the field of infectious disease, microbiology, public health, so and so on. His extensive research and deep understanding of complexities of antimicrobial resistance, AMR, make him exceptionally well placed to guide us through this crucial discussion. In this webinar, Dr. Ranga Reddy will be sharing his insights on antimicrobial resistance, that is a current state of AMR globally, and effective containment strategies. We anticipate a highly informative session that will not only illuminate the challenges we face, but also explore potential pathways for effective action on this issue. We are incredibly fortunate to have Dr. Reddy with us today, and I am confident that his expertise will provide valuable perspectives for all of us. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Rangareddy for this session. Sir, the floor is yours now. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chaudhary ji. And first of all, I would like to thank and express my gratitude to All India Drug Control Officers Association, who is at the forefront or supposed to be at the forefront of AMR fight. I would also like to thank Dr. Uday Bhaskar, Dr. Viraj Garu, and Dr. Lakshmi for this incredible opportunity to share a few thoughts on antimicrobial resistance. So give me a second so that I can share my screen and we start. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
So excellent. Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I am working on three sides of healthcare, being an academician, being also an entrepreneur, and also I happen to be a social activist in terms of the health related issues. Why I'm saying this? Why I'm saying this is basically the problem of antimicrobial resistance is not related to one particular area. This cannot be dealt with one set of experts or one set of stakeholders. So definitely a fortune has fallen on me to be on three sides, which actually gives me an immense opportunity to unite all the possible stakeholders in order to put up a formidable fight against this scourge and a global threat called as antimicrobial resistance. I will just take only 1 minute to explain that how we started actually this work on antimicrobial resistance and infection prevention and control. Way back in 2012, when I came back in India after a very long stint of doing studies and also education and also the work abroad, when I came back to India, I understood after going through the clinics that, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. That is healthcare associated infections and the resistance to the antimicrobials, which is going to create a kind of scenario where the modern medicine in itself would find it very difficult to thrive and go. And certainly, I don't take any pride kind of anticipating or foreseeing this problem. Why I'm saying I don't take pride, because whatever we have done so far, it is just a drop in the ocean. In the last 15 years of our existence as Infection Control Academy and a group of enthusiasts and stakeholders, about 2,000 plus of us, we could not make a significant dent because the people like you who are supposed to be making a difference, we did not had actually the right connect and right kind of collaboration in order to come out of this particular situation, which is escalating globally. So with those few words, now let me go into my presentation. So when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, this is a phenomenon. This is not just a problem. This is a phenomenon which affects both global public health, and also it is dubbed as environmental catastrophe. And it is also a classic example of the tragedy of commons. I am sure many of you are aware of this term called as tragedy of commons. As Dr. Hardin has put it very succinctly, he said, we face a serious dilemma, an instance where individual rational behavior, acting without restraint to maximize personal short-term gain can cause long-range harm to the environment and others around us. And ultimately, it actually also going to inflict the damage to us and to our families. That is how you can actually explain the antibiotic usage. Many of you are aware, for kitch to very, very simple viral infections, a lot of people without a thought keep using antibiotics, thinking that they will get well. But in the process, they are causing a huge harm to the people around them, to the society, to the environment. And finally, those microorganisms which have developed the resistance to such abuse of antibiotics can come back to their own families, causing a serious issue. So that's why antibiotics had to be considered an inexhaustible common, both for prescribers and also for the general public, because the overconsumption can only lead to the net increase in the antibiotic resistance and a likely reduction in the therapeutic efficacy of the drugs. And as you can see on the screen, Dr. Tedros, the Director General of World Health Organization, has put it very succinctly, saying that AMR is a global crisis. And it is the perfect example of the complex, multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder challenges we will increasingly face in the future. I think, nobody can put better than Dr. Tedros in these 3 lines, giving the essence of the problem. So when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, it is a complex issue. It is not a simple issue. If it is a simple issue, probably by now we would have found all the possible solutions. It is a complex issue which involves the humans, the animals, and the environment. The whole interface of this makes it very complex to deal with this problem called as antimicrobial resistance. What is antimicrobial resistance? I know that most of you are the pharmacists with a large baggage of experience and also the knowledge, but still, while starting, let me actually clarify what is antimicrobial resistance. AMR happens when the germs like bacteria, viruses, and fungi stop responding to medicines that should kill them. So this makes infections harder to treat, increases the risk of disease spread, and also the worsens the health conditions and can lead to deaths in humans, animals, and also in other species. Because when we talk about humans, being humans, we always are self-centered and egoistic, thinking only about us, forgetting that we are less than 1% of the living mass on this earth, planet Earth, depriving the opportunity for other species to live. By irrational, abusive consumption, we are putting the other species also in threat. So that is basically, the broad understanding of what is antimicrobial resistance. So how big is this problem? The problem, till very recently, we haven't understood the magnitude of the problem. And most of us thought that probably, a few people here and there are dying. But only when the Lancet has come with its largest ever publication on antimicrobial resistance, we understood, not only we, but also the people who are at the helm of the affairs, the political leaders, the leaders, and the healthcare leaders, everybody understood that this is a catastrophe. And the Lancet report, as you can see, has put a number to the number of deaths which are happening with antimicrobial resistance. This particular publication has estimated that 1.27 million people are dying annually, and the projections are really, something which is going to make everybody sit and think what to do at a personal level, at a professional level, at a community level. And the World Bank, the United Nations, the World Health Organization have been actually sending for last 10 years increasingly the signals that we had to modify our behavior. We had to modify the way we are going to treat with the antibiotics. And some of them have put a number that by 2050, if we are not going to do anything about this antimicrobial resistance, we may see something like 10 million deaths going to happen in worldwide with the problem of antimicrobial resistance. So, just to give a sense of, how big is the problem, if you look at the top 10 causes of the death worldwide, they are like coronary diseases, heart diseases, the stroke, the respiratory infections, neonatal infections, diarrheal diseases, etc., etc. You would see that the number of deaths predicted with antimicrobial resistance are going to far exceed any of the other major morbidity and mortality issues worldwide. So, as I said, the antimicrobial resistance causes 1.27 million deaths annually, and it is already surpassing the CVD, that is cardiovascular diseases, the stroke, HIV/AIDS, malaria, and etc., and threatens to overtake cancer and heart disease as a leading cause of death. As been already discussed, it directly impacts global health by making infections harder to treat, straining not only the individuals, but also the entire healthcare systems and complicating the responses to pandemics and also to the non-communicable diseases. So that's the kind of magnitude of this problem. What would happen if we are not going to deal with this effectively? The city and also the World Bank have come together and they have put 3 scenarios on how this problem is going to evolve. As you can see in this slide, the base is a situation where we are going to not do much about this particular problem, in which case the AMR is going to rise steadily, causing moderate health and economic damage over a period of time. If we are going to do something about it, the low AMR scenario, right, where we are going to do a little bit in terms of actually the controlling growth, still the situation is not going to be very, very positive. It is still going to increase number of deaths, but maybe not catastrophically. If we are going to have a high AMR kind of scenario, that is the worst case, the AMR is going to spread very rapidly, leading to millions of deaths, collapsing the healthcare systems, and also, as you can see here, the impacting the global GDP to fall by 3.8%. It is not only, as you can see, a health issue alone. It also is now linked with the global economic growth. It also would strain already the poverty situation in global south, that is the developing countries. Of course, even the developed countries today too have the poverty, and some of them are going into extreme poverty. And AMR can push about 28 million more people fall into extreme poverty. And it also can cause the issue related to the food security. Because if we are not going to contain this problem, the antimicrobial resistance is going to have an impact on the livestock, decreasing them by 7.5% globally. So just to summarize this particular slide, so the impact is not health alone. That is the kind of message I would like to give through this particular slide. What is the burden in India? India also faces one of the highest antimicrobial resistance rates. Of course, we don't have a very good surveillance, and hence we don't have the exact numbers. But with the kind of high antibiotic use which happens in India, and coupled with over-the-counter sales, poor sanitation, and hospital-acquired infections, or we call them as healthcare-associated infections, and multi-drug resistance, tuberculosis, and other multi-drug infections, etc., India is facing a serious and severe threat. And some of the estimates, which have come from ICMR and other agencies, already put a number to what is the impact. One of the studies has said that, India is already losing about 56,000 newborns who are dying just because of the resistant infections, which cannot be handled by the existing arsenal of antibiotics. You all are very well aware, even the carbapenems and colistins, which are supposed to be the reserve drugs, they are already failing. We are having treatment failures using even these kind of antibiotics, which are considered to be the best possible antibiotics we have today. So the situation is this, and as regulators, I think you know better than me what is the level of consumption which is happening even without prescriptions, which is leading into a catastrophic situation in terms of dealing with the health issues. So, when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, typically we think about bacteria. But when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, it also involves and includes the resistance to viruses, fungi, parasites, etc., against antimicrobial resistance. What does it mean? This means the antibiotic resistance affects the bacterial infections. You all are probably aware that India is having a very high burden of MDR TB, multi-drug resistance TB, right? That means if we are further going to have escalation of this resistance, probably the slogan and also the clarion call given by Prime Minister of India to make India TB mukt may not be, possible and conceivable. And then antiviral resistance, it impacts diseases like HIV and influenza. Antifungal resistance, you already know that Candida auris is getting very hard to treat. Likewise, even the parasitic infections. So if you see in this slide, Alexander Fleming, the father of all the antimicrobials, in the modern times, where we have seen a new era starting in the human evolution, that is antibiotic era, which has actually made modern medicine much more worthwhile, much more competent, much more effective in terms of dealing with many diseases worldwide. And antibiotics are the most important weapons for the treatment of many infectious diseases caused by bacteria. And the most of the modern achievements in medicine like organ transplants, cancer treatments, and the major surgeries cannot be fathomed without the use and without availability of the antibiotics. So since the discovery of the penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming, many new antibiotics have been introduced between 1940 and 1970. Why I'm saying that period? Because that period is considered to be the golden era for antibiotic discovery. During the late 1980s and 90s, only two major groups of antibiotics became available and very commonly used, the third and fourth and now fifth generation of cephalosporins and fluoroquinolines. So other than that, the pipeline has become quite dry after 2020. We have nothing very serious antimicrobial coming out of R&D pipeline of pharmaceutical companies or even the academic institutions. So the potential for pathogens to become resistant was recognized as a threat even before penicillin entered in the common use. And you can see it is inversely proportionate. The more antibiotics, the new generations, what we have, with their decline, we see an increase in terms of the resistance, in terms of the number of deaths happening. The antibiotics are on the fall, the new ones, and the resistant bacteria is on the rise, which is like a double whammy, which is very difficult to deal because even the market is failing. The big companies are failing us to get the new major classes, in order to deal with this double whammy situation. So the problem is not only with antibiotics, even the antifungal resistance is growing. Over 1/3 of potential crop production worldwide is lost due to plant diseases, including fungal infections. Recently, just about 2 weeks back, World Health Organization has come out with a new document, a guidance document on how to go about getting the new antifungals into the stream to deal with the growing menace of antifungal resistance, which is causing or which is affecting more than 6.55 million people and causing a death of 3.8 million people globally. So, antimicrobial resistance, we talked about it. It is a cross-boundary challenge, and it is driven by clinical, biological, social, political, economic, environmental drivers and affects not only humans, but also other species. So we talked about economies, we talked about health, we talked about, also the food production getting impacted. It doesn't stay there. It also has a huge impact on sustainable development goals. Even the issues like clean water and sanitation and the employment, life, climate action, all these things would get impacted if we are not going to resolve this problem. What is the mechanism? How does actually the AMR develops? What are the drivers? What is the mechanism? A lot of people keep thinking that only when we use antibiotics or antimicrobials, probably we will see the resistance. It is not exactly so, because AMR also occurs naturally over time, usually through genetic changes. But when we abuse the antimicrobials, that is when this whole situation accelerates. In a normal natural scenario, if it is one, in the scenario where we are going to abuse the antimicrobials, it is 100,000 or million X in terms of its impact on resistance. So the drivers are usual culprits. You can see that medicine and pharmaceutical factors, that is the consumption, prescriptions, irrational prescriptions, irrational use, non-compliance with infection control practices lack of stewardship, etc., etc. And of course, adding to all that, the industrial effluent, which also is a major problem from pharmaceutical industry. Then you have agricultural and environmental factors and other anthropogenic factors, that is a lack of hygiene and sanitation, very high use of pesticides, disinfectants in households, bioterrorism, and and of course there is a lot of travel which is going on worldwide, which is also impacting. So once the selective pressure occurs to the antibiotic because of all these factors, there is acquired resistance, and then you see mutations, horizontal gene transfer, and also the mobile elements, making it very, very difficult and also enabling the rise of the superbugs. There is a huge role of this human animal interface, because when we actually abuse or overprescribe antibiotic, it results in development of drug resistance, prolonged hospitalization, poor hygiene, and community spread finally leads into drug bacteria. But if you look at the other uh, flow, where the animals are given antibiotics, especially the food animals, like the chicken, the pork, and beef, etc., etc. These animals develop drug-resistant bacteria, and through the food, and also through the water and soil, when the fecal mass is going to these areas, then the drug-resistant bacteria spread to the general public. So here is very quick comment that, when we talk about antimicrobial resistance, we get fixed on only the human consumption and human overuse and misuse. But the problem is that there is a huge usage, that is overuse and misuse, happening on the animal side. About 70 to 80% of the global production of antimicrobials is happening in animals. So that is a serious issue, and the regulators had to put their mind on how to control this. These are the drivers, I talked about it, and how does evolution of the superbugs happen? Um, Definitely misuse, underuse, human activities, climatic and ecological perturbations, which leads into MDR clones and superbugs. And then, also you have environmental driven factors like poverty, soil and water, gut microbiota changes, etc., etc., which makes superbugs easier to go and invade the humans with their pathogenicity. So our world today is interconnected, and a virus that jumps into a hunter in Central Africa can be in London no time, or something happening in New York. Currently there is a measles outbreak going on. Somebody sitting in a plane within 14 hours reaching Hyderabad, they can actually bring those infections. So, and also, the food chain, all this is also making the antimicrobial resistance situation very, very bad. We talked about the key driver of AMR being the veterinary side. The treatment of animals is okay, but uh, you also see the antimicrobial usage for as growth promoters. That had to be curtailed. If we don't curtail it, we are not going to find a solution to this problem. And also, instead of actually maintaining the biosecurity, using actually antibiotics as a prophylaxis, that is absolutely not done. We need to handle it. When we talk about this global problem, right, we talked about the drivers, we talked about the origins, now coming to the nations, right? Although it is a global problem, but the problem is not equal in rich countries and the poor countries. The drivers and the mechanisms actually to deal with them are entirely different because of the economic and socio-political situations. So in Global South, especially in India, I would like actually to highlight a few areas, which are the major drivers. That is poor health access. That is the people in especially rural areas don't have access to the doctors, qualified doctors, which makes them actually to go to either quacks or start with the self-treatment, going to a pharmacy, taking an antibiotic in order to alleviate their pain and also the disease. So that is one. The lax implementation of the regulations. It is not that India doesn't have the regulations. Either it is over-the-counter dispensing, or it is industrial effluent disposal. We have regulations, but only we don't have a proper implementation of them. Over-the-counter dispensing, self-prescription, and the quacks. I think you, as actually the drug inspectors, you had to really do something about it. You had to really, put a stick in order to ensure that these quacks are not going to actually prescribe the most advanced antibiotics, which are available to us, along with, many others like uh, steroids, etc., etc. So how do we contain? There are global activities and there are domestic activities. At a global level, definitely we need to up the advocacy, governance, and political agenda. We had to promote access and responsible use. On the domestic side, we had to improve professional education, optimize prescription practices, and most importantly, we had to improve the infection prevention and control practices. What are the 10 steps? I talked about some of them, but also, some of them which I did not talk about are the vaccines as alternate to therapeutics, in order to ensure that we are going to have, prevention at the center of our healthcare rather than curation at the center of us. Vaccines can be on the prophylactic side of it. Public awareness, I am sure, you have a very big role to play. The rapid diagnostics, so that we can diagnose properly and start giving antibiotic prescriptions rather than going for empirical treatment. The surveillance had to be upped so that we get the right kind of information about what is happening, which microorganisms, and what kind of resistance to, and also to understand the bug drug kind of combinations which are being done and where it is not working. And of course, the research which had to happen. Antimicrobial stewardship is one of the key things for the healthcare workers to follow, right? In order to ensure that they are going to give the right prescription for the right infection in the right dose, etc., etc., right? If we don't actually teach our professionals in order to do a proper diagnosis, identify the proper bug, and give adequate a drug, rather than trying to give a whole spectrum of antibiotics to cover every possible antibiotic on the earth. Research had to go on, in multiple areas, especially the diagnostics is a problem. Of course, the treatment, antimicrobial medicines is a problem. To fill this gap, we need to do something. Is there something being done? Or it is all a problem? No, I think globally there are a lot of good things happening, starting from 2014, where the first ministerial conference on AMR happened. The global political commitment is definitely visible and evident. And if you look at this whole journey up to 2024, in last 10 years, there is a significant momentum which is built in terms of the policy. In terms of the policy, please note that, not in terms of implementation. In terms of policy, getting the global action plan in place, etc., etc. And 2024 UN General Assembly has met for the second time, and there also certain declarations were made. We were part of it as Infection Control Academy. we had been one of the key players in terms of getting this draft declaration of this political declaration. And and of course, we feel responsible that this declaration is going to be implemented, and in the real life, we are going to see a positive change. And what is it about this UNGA high-level meeting on AMR? Why we are talking about it? Because it, as Dr. Lakshmi has mentioned in her opening talk, saying that finally all the nations, who are the members of United Nations, have recognized AMR as an urgent global threat affecting human, animal, plant health, and with colossal economic and health impact. And of course, they talked about 1 trillion additional healthcare costs by 2050 if we are not going to do anything about it. And also, we probably would lose 1.8 years of global life expectancy if we are not going to do something about it. And the global leaders have urged and reaffirmed that it is essential addressing AMR comprehensively through One Health approach. One Health approach. It is not only human centric, but One Health approach. And committed that the global leaders have committed to reduce the number of deaths by AMR by 10% by 2030, based on the baseline of 4.95 million deaths in 2019. I'll just take 3 more minutes, and then we have a global action plan with 5 elements. Emphasis is given more on the prevention and strengthening the knowledge, reducing the infections, etc., etc. And then there was a Jeddah commitments in succession to the UN General Assembly political declaration, where certain commitments are taken by the nations. And it is very heartening to see that all the nations have committed significant funds in order to deal with this problem. And in India too, we had a national response, and with starting from 2010 itself, India has started moving in the right direction. And the National Action Plan has 6 major elements, that is from awareness, understanding to the innovations and the leadership, which all are very, very important elements. This is something, which I would like to draw your attention, because you are regulators, probably strategic priority 4 of the National Action Plan had to be taken seriously. And I urge all of you actually to help us to ensure that there is going to be compliance to Schedule H, H1, and other things which are going to contain the dispensing of antimicrobials, both for the human consumption and also for the animal consumption. These are the states which have put their state action plans. I happen to actually develop and also implement the state action plan in Andhra Pradesh, and now we are going to do it in Telangana. And I really liked how AIDCOC consumer education initiatives are taken. I think you should include antimicrobial resistance awareness as one of the key topics. I know that you have multiple topics, but this is something which is concerning all the human beings, and also animals. So you should actually, and not you should, I urge and request you to take a serious note of this and make it as one of those priority consumer educations through your organization and your actions. And there are a lot of blind spots. How do we tackle? We had to have global surveillance. We had to up the R&D investments. We had to curtail the agricultural overuse. We had to improve the public awareness, like what I said. And we also had to ensure that the health systems are going to be strengthened. With that, I would stop. These are our coordinates. As I said in the beginning, we have more than 2,000 volunteers working in our organization who are phenomenally doing a good job in terms of policy advocacy, awareness, education, training, and other aspects at a global level, at a national level, and also at a subnational level in various states and districts. If you wish, you can also join us. There is nothing to pay, only your time is required, your commitment is required, so that we all can come together to fight with this scourge and a threat to the humanity called as antimicrobial resistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Indeed, it's a insightful and very elaborative presentation. And I'm very sure that today's session is not just a workshop, but it's going to be a call for action for all the participants, including the regulators, industry participants, and consumers as well. And as you have rightly pointed out, the regulators are going to play a very pivotal role in combating this issue of the AMR at the global level. And I would like to bring in the perspective from the regulators, and I would like to call upon Dr. Viraju sir to address on this issue and and how can the regulatory agencies, especially in our country, combat this issue of AMR, and what sort of strategies that the regulatory officials could play in controlling the overuse or misuse or irrational use of the antibiotics, and the best possible ways that we could effectively work towards enforcing these containment policies. Dr. Viraju sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prasanna, for roping me into this very important and informative session for today for all our drugs control officers working in India. I first thank Dr. Rangareddy Garu for his excellent presentation. As he mentioned, this antimicrobial resistance is a multifactorial origin. So it comes from different sources like abuse, overuse, underutilization, environmental factors, food producing animals, so whatnot. All these factors contribute for this big problem. It's like affecting the whole society as a whole. So as a regulator's perspective, as I was part of the regulators here and after migrating to the United States, answering from the industry side, and also being a registered pharmacist in USA, there, the continuous education is a big process for prescribers as well as pharmacists. So they get upgraded in terms of their knowledge base, the developments in novel therapies, developments in microbial resistances, what are the strategies available across the globe for combating this menace. So all these work, the tools are available, but the level of acceptance and follow-up in the Indian scenario is a big challenge for us. For example, as when I was an inspector here, while auditing one of the facilities, I came across, it's an antibiotic suspension, this ampicillin or amoxicillin for oral solution. We prepare in bottles and we ask them, the patient, to add a boiled water to a certain level in the bottle. So when I was, auditing that facility, I noticed that the bottle was meant to be a 100 milliliter bottle. Means each 5 ml contains, say, 250 milligram of amoxicillin. But the bottle was supposed to contain enough medicine for 100 ml. But by mistake, this was packed in 150 ml bottle. So that means the patient who is going to get the medicine will receive 33% less medicine as per the label claim. So when we asked the manufacturer, what made you to do this? It was inadvertent mistake, but there's no way they could find out that something was wrong. Even I took a sample and sent it to a lab. Lab declared it as standard quality. Imagine that. It was declared as standard quality. Then when we discussed the problem, then what the answer came from the lab was, the whole product was poured into a 100 ml volumetric flask or measuring cylinder. They make up the volume, they dilute it, and then test it. Yeah, then when you make up to 100 ml, it will be standard quality. But the patient is getting it in a 150 ml bottle. The mark on the bottle is 150 ml. When you add 150 ml bottle, that gets diluted to 66% of the label claim. So the takeaway point here is we have to change the labeling practices, what we do here. We ask the consumer to add water up to a mark on the bottle. If the mark on the bottle is not right, then it could be an improper dose for the patient. Instead of that, if you say add a certain amount of water, like 70 ml of boiled water to the bottle that makes up to 100 ml, then that will be fine. So this is the different perspective we have to adopt when we are approving a product, when we are auditing a site for these antibiotics. So that is one aspect. Say other aspect is, patient education, the pharmacist education, the continuous education for prescribers. Sometimes the prescribers, by the workload, they can commit a communication error in the prescription. So that should have been pointed out while dispensing the medication. So to say that, the pharmacist should be capable enough calling the doctor and telling that this is not something is not right here. So to have that, one should have a lot of information on this. That is where the information, the education, continuous learning are important in advocating these things. The patients also have a responsibility in combating this menace, like preventing all fevers do not need the antibiotics. Antibiotics will not work against viruses. So these education, patient education is important, and to prevent them from self-medicare. The manufacturers, we should encourage them not to promote overuse of these antibiotics. There are deals and sales, there are campaigns, there are promotions. All this, can be put a full stop, not a full stop, even a comma also will help us a lot. The prescribers and the patients and the regulators can have, prescribers and the regulators can come together and sit for a protocol. We should have a protocol of treatment, like what is the first line of antibiotic required a particular kind of infection. So in the absence of any protocols, everybody is at liberty to prescribe anything. So as per law, doctor can prescribe any medicine. You cannot prevent, of course, beyond the scope of their practices, it's not allowed. So a dentist cannot prescribe a cardiac medicine because it's beyond their practice. So these how do you prevent these? To prevent these, you should have treatment protocols. The same applies to antibiotic treatments. So along with the regulatory bodies and the professional associations like IPA, IMA, ICMR, all these can come together, prepare protocols, advocate rational use of medications, like the famous physicians, famous celebrities we can rope in and make some campaigns like the finish the course even if you feel better, so that the resistance doesn't develop. So never share antibiotics. This is not for everybody. So each person, each infection requires a different antibiotic. So you cannot save them for future use, or you cannot share with your family members. So antibiotics don't work on viruses. So a misuse today, resistance tomorrow. These are certain slogans we can adopt, can be popularized by the famous doctors, celebrities, so we can rope in. So regulators definitely will have an important role in advocating, in educating, in collaborating with all the stakeholders. So I hope I answered your question, Lakshmi.
Yeah, that's rightly said, sir. I mean, the multi-stakeholder collaboration by all the stakeholders is definitely a key thing in addressing this global issue. And moving forward, as there are new innovations are happening, and most of the companies, and even for that matter, recently one of the Indian company has also come up with a new antimicrobial agent, nephrotomycin by Vocard, which was recently got approved by the DCGI. And I would like to bring in the perspective from the CDSCO. We have Dr. Rubina Bose, ma'am, Deputy Drugs Controller working at CDSCO headquarters. So, ma'am, what would be the role played by the CDSCO, and what sort of approval process and streamlining the approval process of the novel antimicrobial agents are being developed by the industry without compromising the safety and efficacy? And particularly, what role of the international regulatory harmonization is going to play in supporting this fight against the AMR? Over to you, ma'am. Rubina, ma'am.
Thank you. And so I was, an introduction by chance, but thank you for these, questions. And it was actually, one time I was in the international division and working with this AMR for a long, and also with the WHO. So I was interested in this topic. And rightly, Dr. Professor Rangan Reddy has actually, given the perspective in which the various committees and the steps which have been taken by the government of India for this antibiotic stewardship. There are various committees who are working in the different sectorial to meet the SDG goal. And so just the question specific, I would just like to say that the previous, while you were asking one of our drug control officials on this, that there are GMP issues, the issues on GMP, and also that some advocacy would be much useful. While approving, in case of the site for approval, I would say that now the new rules, the NDCT rules, we would always like to highlight that, which is in place since 2019, with the various provisions for looking, with all the transparency and predictability in the review process, with our online system of review. So everything is like everything is there are scope of applications by any manufacturers throughout the globe in the online system, in the 5 modules of the CTD, that specified timelines. That is very important, which is already there in the rules. So, and if the starting from the means that the rule has such provisions that it promotes this scientific and ethical research from the very early stage. So once anybody who, suppose there is a indigenous manufacturer, the rule is clear for him how to, and the online system has all the scope of how the submission would be there and what are the points which they need to develop. And all regulatory guidance is in place for this for the process of regulatory evaluation. And coming to the for any imported product, as you mentioned that how we are can harmonize with the international regulations. We are already harmonized with the international regulations because our application format is CTD modules. So anybody who wants to apply, there are also various provisions in the rules where we can take up the first drug approval depending on the seriousness of the disease, the life-threatening serious disease or disease of special relevance to the Indian population, or when it is an unmet medical need, we have the first drug approval process, which has been very effectively implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the same can be used, as we knew that it is an AMR is a threat to the society and to also to definitely to Indian population. So such all provisions are available for looking into these evaluation of the files for any drugs which is indigenously developed or it is imported. And there are also provisions in the rules where we can look into the waiver or a reliance on the global population to bring the drug faster into this Indian population. So those provisions, so I just wanted to say that the regulatory provisions, ease of doing business, the online system, everything is available for giving these opportunities for fast track approval, reviewing the process. There are experts group who are available who can look into the files immediately and can approve the products. And I would like, just wanted to add on one more thing here, that while we were talking about the GMP issues, what one was the important thing is that not only, it is very important to see the containment practices which are followed by the manufacturers and the GMP. The inspectors should be well trained in the looking into these GMP practices. A well group trained, competent GMP group inspectors are important for our country, and their training should be continuous, where they can really go into the facilities and look into these containment practices, so that there is no antibiotics which is either in the form of the waste water or in the form of the environmental release. So that competency has to be there always with the GMP inspectorate of the country. So this is some of the things. And when we are approving the files, I mean, when we are going for a new facility design or approving a new facility for an antibiotics, it starts from there. So it starts from the very early stage. Even if it is not a novel antibiotic or a new drug, that doesn't come under the definition of the new drug, but it is coming as an antibiotic, which is as a generic formulation. So these things are to be looked into from the very early stage: the development, the waste disposal of the waste, how the design is made in the antibiotic manufacturing facility. These are also an important aspects, other than and the most important being also the last, and I would just mention on this, the prescription practices by the prescribers. That is the most important. And of course, there are antibiotic treatment protocol, which are already developed in this country, but that has to be followed, that has to be implemented. So implementation, monitoring, supervision is most important, which can really, look into, because laws are in place, but it may not be implemented actually. So that is what is one of the things, which comes as an hindrance to this process. So thank you very much. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Uday Bhaskar ji and all. And also, I think I see others. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Appreciate your insights, ma'am. Though it is a last minute call, but we really appreciate for sharing your experiences and the knowledge with our audience, and taking the cue from the Ravina ma'am's intervention on the practices being followed by the manufacturers and the best practices, especially in the containment of the waste effluents, which is one of the sources of driver for the AMR. So I would like to bring in now Dr. Rangareddy sir. So to talk about the role of manufacturers in curbing this issue of the AMR and the stewardship program. So what sort of a fine balance that the manufacturers need to play, maintaining the commercial interest vis-a-vis with the production, the distribution and supply chain, and ultimately in ensuring the containment practices of the AMR?
I think pharmaceutical industry have a very critical role in the whole antimicrobial resistance containment fight, because they are the source. They are the source of the product, which is kind of escalating this problem called as antimicrobial resistance. There are multiple things. I think, appreciate Dr. Viraju, who has briefly touched upon 2-3 critical issues. One is the awareness. Second is ethical practices, right? The third is to ensure in terms of actually their environmental practices, right? I think these are the 3 critical areas. One definitely I would like to bring up, as since I am also the chairman of Indian Medical Association Public Health Committee. What we see is, I am not trying to put a brush on all the pharmaceutical industry, but there are bad eggs, there are black sheep who directly go to the rural areas in order to create the demand through unethical practices, right? First of all, pharmaceutical companies have no business to talk to the people who are not qualified doctors, right? You cannot actually promote your drug to somebody who is not qualified to promote it. But unfortunately, as I said, some black sheep, they first start their marketing and their promotion at the rural level, taking actually the help from these quacks in order to prescribe left, right, and center, for most advanced antibiotics. The situation is so pathetic today. You find about 50% of the people who are coming from the rural into the ICUs in major hospitals, you would see they already developed resistance to all possible antibiotics, because by the time they reach the tertiary or quaternary care center, they already are given meropenem, all the kind of carbapenoms, all the kind of combinations, etc., leaving no room actually for the physicians to really manage that kind of infections. And unfortunately, we lose such patients and we are helpless actually, right? That is where, the pharma industry and pharma industry bodies and associations have to come together to have a self-control and self-restraint, saying that unethical promotion is something, which we would curtail. I think, if everybody is going to take a pledge to follow the good marketing practices, I think, half the battle is already won. The second one is, since pharma industry has got a lot of good resource available through their medical representatives and also through their CMEs, especially those who are into the antibiotic manufacturers, had to allocate a certain amount or certain budget in order to do two things. One is at a consumer level awareness, like, Dr. Viraju mentioned, that, bringing in, the legendaries and the stars in order to talk about the kind of consequences of endless use of or abuse of antibiotics, right? On the second end, they also need to come together with professional organizations like yours, AIDCOG, and voluntary organizations like ours and the Indian Medical Association, Indian Dental Association, in order to drive the diagnostic stewardship and antimicrobial stewardship. As Rubina ma'am has very rightly said, there are a lot of protocols are available, right? But the protocols had to be understood, right? Somebody had to train them. There are in India several, I actually wrote about a year back a preface to a 2,500 page book, which is called as Standard Treatment Guidelines, STGs, right? But who is going to read them? Who is going to actually take this information to the doctors? Of course, IMA had to play a role, but the industry is going to come together. I think, we will be having better outcomes in terms of building these antimicrobial stewardship practices in all healthcare centers. And last but not the least is, improving their environmental footprint, right? Again, I also have an industry apart from being a physician and also being a social activist. So we all need to take the responsibility for the communities, who are surrounding us and the society at large, and see that, how we are going to have the sustainable practices and ensure that, we are going to have reduced environmental antibiotic, antimicrobial kind of pollution, which ultimately is going to come and probably bite our own families at some point in time. So, and last but not the least, my appeal to all the big companies who have very large market cap, right, who have got large exports, please put antibiotic discovery as some of your priority. I understand that, your investors would look at something which is going to get, hundreds of multiples of their investments. But take it as your social responsibility and beef up your R&D pipeline, and especially the top 10 and top 20 companies. Please, please, please prioritize R&D, kind of investments into antimicrobial discovery. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Raminda. Since you have touched upon the discovery part, and I would also like to intervene on the alternative sort of diagnostic tools need to be innovated by the industry, apart from the mainstream antibiotic, new antibiotics to be developed by the pharmaceutical players. So would you like to slightly touch upon those areas?
Yes, I think, as discussed in the beginning itself, if the continuum is like this, first is prevention. If we are able to prevent, then there is no need for antibiotic usage. Means there would not be any infection. If there is no infection, there is no antibiotic use. If there is no antibiotic use, there is no kind of resistance developed, right? And then we are safer as a society, as citizens. So one of the key missing and wide gaps in the whole scenario is the diagnostics today. Because if you look at the current conventional diagnostics, either they are too expensive or they take too much of time in order to give the result, so that the doctor can pinpointedly look at the drug bug combination and ensure that there is an optimal treatment which is going to happen. So look at one scenario where you are going to do the conventional culturing, right? You know that it takes at least 72 hours before you are going to get the result. Nobody is going to wait for that. And today, the antibiotics are something like 40 to 50 times cheaper than doing a culture, right? So the economic kind of benefit and economic inequivalence is also actually is a problem. So, and on the second side, you have got advanced diagnostics, which are super expensive, and further is going to escalate the cost for the patient, which is going to deter both the patient and also the doctor to confirm the diagnosis, confirm the bug before they start the treatment. And hence there had to be a lot of investments which had to happen into near real time point of care diagnostics in order to improve the identification and proper diagnosis before actually going for the treatment. There are certain developments which are happening already. The artificial intelligence and machine learning is coming in a big way. I am sure the artificial intelligence is going to be a boon, especially for the developing countries, where building the large infrastructure is going to be very expensive. If you look at a typical, where Veer Raju Garu is in US, setting up a lab of $1 million is not a problem for them. But setting up a $1 million, forget about $1 million, even a 1 crore kind of lab, even in the government sector as a hub, is a problem. One is, setting up, but then you have got problems of availability of consumables, availability of the right kind of manpower to handle these machines and all that stuff. So in this kind of scenario, the most scalable, the most economical is to take the aid of the the latest trends in the digital technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning. I am sure the industry stalwarts and industry biggies are also going to actually do something about getting the right diagnostics. I remember as a student, as a medical student, and as a young doctor, along with the antibiotics, we also used to get the to identify actually whether the right bug drug combination is there or not. The companies used to give us the strips, right? And they used to help us actually in a very small labs also to identify actually whether this is compatible or not. But today I don't see that. Today, none of the companies are helping actually the medical community, medical fraternity, in order to do this very quick kind of confirmatory diagnosis before actually moving into the treatment. So industry has a very vital role. And I think, those especially who are into the antibiotic manufacturing, they also had to look at those points what I talked about, and also simultaneously focus on the diagnostics, which are very, very crucial in the whole process of managing this menace called as antimicrobial resistance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I think we are running past the scheduled time. And in the interest of time, I would like to take the questions posted by the participants. I could see a few questions. I think one from Nilesh Gandhi, sir, from the Maharashtra, ex-assistant commissioner from the FDA Maharashtra. So the question is that how do we see the issue of disposal of returned or expired or unused medicines impacting the AMR issue? And I believe the Kerala state has already incorporated this addressing this issue to address the AMR problem. Sir, would you like to elaborate on this particular point?
Yes, sure. I think, as we all know that especially in India, health is a state subject and states have to play a very vital role. And state action plans can be the right platform in order to address these issues. I see from Nileshji 2, 3 points. One is, of course, the disposal. It had to be part and parcel of your state action plan for the containment of antimicrobial resistance. Kerala is doing a good job, both in terms of restricting and also, prohibiting the over-the-counter disposal, but also using these pharmacies as a center where the people can bring in the unused antibiotics for disposal. That's a very good thing. And in Telangana also, there was a pilot project which was done by Nizam Institute of Medical Sciences, where they have put separate bins, for the people to bring their unused medication, expired medication. They can actually put it there, which was further handed over to the Pollution Control Board for further processing. That is one of it. Second, I see a point also regarding the animal feed and antimicrobials. This is something, which is really, really a bigger problem than actually the overuse and misuse in humans. Actually, this is unethical, and the government had to take it very, very seriously. And as an example and anecdote, I can talk about actually what has happened in Andhra Pradesh. In Andhra Pradesh, as probably most of you know, that especially in that coastal belt, there is a lot of aquaculture which happens. That is growing, the prawns and fish. Till the state government has come with a GO completely banning use of antimicrobials, the use of antimicrobials was very, very high. That was partly because the farmers were not aware, and those so-called veterinarians were actually giving them all these recipes for disaster, right? And there was also an economic stimuli for these farmers, when their consignments, export consignments were actually returned, because at the destination, the authorities have found the residues of these antibiotics and they have sent it. So at a right moment, Andhra Pradesh government has come with a GO banning this, explaining why, the farmers would benefit in the long run. And that has actually reduced, I am very happy to say that, that has reduced the usage in aquaculture, the antimicrobials by 90%. So that is a very good, kind of best practice, which probably other states could also emulate, so that, we can tackle this problem much more effectively.
Thank you, sir. I believe both the questions posed by Nilesh has already been answered, and I would be taking the next question posed by Mr. Chandra Rao from the Andhra Pradesh Drugs Control Department. And his major point of intervention is on the lack of sufficient number of the qualified doctors at the rural level, which is really going to help the quacks to take the advantage of the situation, and in a larger way, it's going to impact this health crisis. So, at the central level, like, are there any sort of an efforts being taken to address this particular problems?
Unfortunately, I can't say in affirmative that something good is happening. Unfortunately, all the state governments and central governments somehow they are not proactive in this. It had been a long demand from the medical fraternity to strengthen the primary healthcare, right? If we are able to strengthen the primary healthcare, if we are going to improve the health access and bring in the health equity, automatically quacks would automatically go off. Just by saying few mantras, they will not disappear, right? Government had to really come with a very clear plan how they are going to improve the access and improve the equity. Then only this problem and menace can be curtailed. Again, Chandra Rao Garu is from AP. AP had a good development which has happened a couple of years back, that the government has taken about 8,000 medical doctors and deployed them as family health physicians. They were attached to a cluster of villages where they were supposed to go with the mobile van, having medicines, diagnostic, and also the doctor. And the village volunteers were supposed to be the coordinators in order to organize for all these checkups. I witnessed actually in one of the villages during that time that the mandate of the government was the village volunteer. If the patient is unable to come to the mobile van or the village health center, they are supposed to organize the visit of the doctor to the patient home. So those are the kind of innovations which are to happen. And here the government has a very big role to play. If the government is going to just say that universal health coverage, this, that, and all that stuff, nothing is going to change. What is required is a significant increase in the overall budget for the health with a focus on primary health care. Today, a paltry below 2% at a central level, around 4%, that is the average among the states, is not going to help the situation. The most progressive states in India also are not reaching the 8% threshold, which has been, kind of given as a guidance by the committee, which was constituted. What is the kind of optimal budget the states had to allocate for the health? They have advocated for 8%. The most advanced state like Kerala is hovering around 5 to 6%. They are still 2% down from the optimal. And other states, I can't even talk about. There are states, which are spending only 2%. The state where I am currently, called Telangana, is hovering around 4%. We have made a very strong request actually to increase it further. Only by such focused investments and focused kind of approach to improve the primary health care, we can actually bring down the mortality and the morbidity and overall improve the wellness of the population. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate the overarching kind of a scenario that needs to be followed in addressing this. And so with that, we are calling off the Q&A, and I would now request our Director General Uday Bhaskar sir for the concluding remarks, please. Sir, you're on mute, sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi. And first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rangareddy Garu, Dr. Veerraj, and Dr. Rubina. So after hearing them for 1.5 hours, I don't think I can speak anything. I have 2-3 points. One is that he has requested that All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation should work along with them, and as it's a very serious concern, with a global serious concern. So he was also talking about the industry and industry's contribution, and particularly industry is not very much bothered about what are the consequences of post sale. So they always seriously think about how much I can sell. That is their point. Rangareddy is also talking about the socio-economic conditions. Actually, that is much more relevant. So the unqualified and quacks. So they are running the roost. If you see the pharmaceutical industry, so they are always focused on the profits and the business and the margins. So that if you go in that direction, you're not going to contribute anything further in eradicating or in reducing the anti-microbial resistance. And the another one is that, the Kerala officers and Kerala government is already doing on unused medicines in a very big agenda. Our All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation office bearers are seriously working with the government, and we are also the supporting them. I think with your expertise and the commitment from All India Drugs Control Officers Confederation, certainly we'll move forward. But unfortunately, when we joined as regulators at a very early age, the problems what we are facing with the community pharmacies, one thing. The another one is that the manufacturers. The another one is that selling drugs without prescription. So even after 35, 40 years, we are not able to do anything. Even though the prescription drugs are not a very big challenge, but it's a very big challenge, and the regulators will have an access to all these more than 5 lakh community pharmacies. So in that, we can try to create awareness. Viraju has also mentioned about the awareness. So the regulatory agencies need to be more aggressive, because the people will listen to us. But the community pharmacy particularly, I'll tell you one small example. When the Indian pharmaceutical industry is growing like anything, but if you see the community pharmacy, where the interface to the consumer, we're almost 50 years behind. The industry is on par with the global levels. But if you see the community pharmacy, I think we're almost 50 years behind the developed countries. So once that problem is, addressed, that is in the hands of the regulators, and we'll try to work in that direction. And I'll tell you a simple example with my personal experience. Even forget about the antibiotics. The countries like Iran, we think that, when I was in Tehran, I had some problem with the eye. So I was not carrying that medicine. I wanted to have a eye drops. And after showing my eye also, they refused. No, it's a prescription drug. Without prescription, we can't give. So that kind, when in India, left and right, we can prescribe and self-medication. And Ranga Reddy has also mentioned about the companies promoting through quacks. In particular few areas, with my experience as a regulator, there are so many quacks who are well practiced, and the patients than the qualified people in the rural areas. Vizag, you take for example, in Vizag there is a huge healthcare facilities, but in all the slums they are ruled by the quacks. So all these representatives will queue up. So the ethics, overnight we can't put into their mind, but we need to come out of that. With this, once again, I am very much thankful to Ranga Reddy Garu, Veerraju, Dr. Rubina, and RP, and particularly to Lakshmi. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And sir, a quick closing point of recommendation, sir, from Ranga Reddy sir and Veerraju sir, because we have planned to have a separate concluding remarks from both of you, but given the interest of the time, we were not able to proceed that. But I would like to quickly give 3 recommendations from your experiences, both from Veerraju sir and Ranga Reddy sir.
I think first and foremost, you have the power, use it. Use it in order to really bring a change which is required for the society. That is controlling the unqualified people from prescribing. That is in your control. Ensuring that there is no dispensing, which is going to be done over the counter. Use your power, right? Because as I told you, that at the end of the day, it may actually hit our family also at some point in time, us also at some point in time. So you are bestowed with the power, being a
sir.
yeah.
So,
so I request all of you to use that very effectively, the kind of power which comes with your position in order to streamline that process. Second is, please, if you are willing, we are ready actually to run the antimicrobial stewardship kind of training. Please participate and impart that knowledge among your colleagues, so that there is a better understanding of what can go wrong if we are going to use indiscriminately these antimicrobials. That is second part of it. Third part is, you as officers also have a significant influence on the communities, right? Please use that relation and also your kind of relation with the community to create a bigger awareness. I saw, one of the officers putting his own money and putting the stickers in all the pharmacies saying that antibiotics are not popcorn, right? Think before you ask, kind of very simple messages. He made stickers and asked actually these pharmacists to put very prominently with his own money, right? So there are people, who are very concerned. I think, you are very knowledgeable people with power. Please use it for the right kind of change, which had to happen in the society overall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Viraj.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Rangareddy garu. Yeah, you rightly mentioned in your talk, there are digital tools available for controlling the abuse or misuse of many of the medications. Yes, one of that is e-prescriptions. When you implement e-prescriptions, these quackery will be out. These e-prescriptions will be given only for those practitioners registered under Medical Council Act. Like something like so that. The access to that system should be restricted to only qualified doctors. Then, by doing this, so most of these quackery will be out in prescribing, indiscriminate prescribing of antibiotics or other medicines requiring prescriptions. I think digitalization is the way to go now.
Great, sir. I think we have heard a lot of insights, a lot of recommendations for every stakeholder involved in the system. And ultimately, it is the kind of an integrated approach need to be followed by every individual with the great conviction to end this menace in order to give a future, better future for the next generation people. So with that note, we only call off this meeting, and I extend a sincere thanks to Dr. Rangareddy garu, Dr. Veeraraju garu, R.P. Chaudhary sir, and Dr. Rubina ma'am, and also DG Uday Bhaskar sir. And I also acknowledge the presence of senior officers from the State Drug Control Department, especially Jyoti Sardesi ma'am, who was there in the panel list, and many other senior officers, both from the CDSO and the state level. Thank you all for joining this and actively participating in this today's session. So thank you everyone and have a nice day ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.